Great, and we're live streaming this on Culinary's Facebook. If you wanted to share it, it's facebook.com/culinary6. So, good evening, everybody. I'm Bethany Kahn. I'm from the Culinary Union. I am pleased to welcome you all here today. Thanks for coming to the Writer's Block, and thank you so much for hosting this Writer's Block. Yay! So Hamilton Nolan is a labor journalist who writes regularly for Indies Times Magazine and The Guardian. He has written about labor, politics, and class war. We know something about that, right? Yeah. Class war for the New York Times, The Washington Post, Gawker, Splinter, and other publications. He was the longest-serving writer in Gawker's history and was the leader in unionizing Gawker Media in 2015. Oh, yeah. And I Hamilton and I met and shared some of our tech language with him. Hamilton is a proud member of the Writers Guild of America East, and he lives in Brooklyn, New York. And
Brooklyn.
So after his reading, Hamilton's going to be joining a conversation with Ted Pappageorge. Ted Pappageorge is the Secretary-Treasurer for the Culinary Union. He was born and raised in Las Vegas. And Ted has been a Culinary Union member since 1982. In 2018, Ted helped win the strongest and most comprehensive technology, immigration, sexual harassment, and safety language in the history of any union. Any union in the United States. And so tonight we're here to celebrate Hamilton's new book, The Hammer, Power, Inequality, and the Struggle for the Soul of Labor, which is on sale in the back. And for culinary folks, we have a book for you already, so we'll get those instructions to you. And Hamilton will be signing copies after this conversation. So thanks again. Please welcome Hamilton and Ted.
Thank you all very much. Thank you to Writer's Block for hosting us. Thank you, Bethany Kahn, for the introduction, and also a lot of incredible work over the years with me, the journalist. So I hope you all appreciate Bethany, the best in the business.
Yes, she is. Yeah.
And thank you truly to all of you for coming out. I know you work. It's not always easy to get people to come to book events, so I truly appreciate all of you for coming out and filling up this room. I'll tell you just really briefly what this book is about, and then I'll read a little bit of it, and then I'll talk to Ted, and then if anybody has questions and stuff, we'll do that. But this book is about basically how the labor movement can save America. It's about the fact that unions are the single strongest tool that America has to fix the single biggest problem America has, which is the rise of inequality over the last 50 years plus. And it's also about sort of why the labor movement has failed to do that, and why unions haven't been able to rein in inequality in the way that they should. So it's not just a cheerleading book about the labor movement, it's also about kind of the problems that we have within the labor movement. And so the book is reported all over the country. There's a lot of different chapters trying to capture different aspects of the labor movement, good and bad. And I wanted to have a chapter about basically an effective union. What does it look like a union that's actually doing what we would all like unions to do? And that is the chapter that is about your union, the Culinary Union. I've been a labor reporter for more than 10 years. I've been all over the country and seen a lot of different unions. And I think it's hard for me to think of any union that has had as much of an impact on a single city, certainly, as this union has had on Las Vegas. And it's just, I think the Culinary is such a great example of a union that uses labor organizing to build political power. A lot of great things that you all know that sort of attracted me here and made me write the chapter basically about what unions can be about the Culinary Union. So I'm going to read just a little bit. I know I've done a lot of these events, and I know that the author reading is usually the most boring part. So I'll just read a couple pages here. But I know that Justin Larson is in the front row and hasn't read the book. and doesn't know that he's in the book. So I'll just read you the first couple pages of the chapter, which feature Justin in his honor here. All right. We're in the Bellagio. We're in the Bellagio, right through one of the inconspicuous, authorized personnel-only doors, where the perfectly polished and unmarked floors of the marble-drenched casino end and the scuffed, dreary floors of the workplace begin. Down endlessly winding hallways with decommissioned slot machines and pallets of wine and head-high carts of clean linens and old tables and chairs and crates of bottled water stacked against the walls, each door leads to a different restaurant or snack bar or ballroom where the pretend world of Las Vegas unfolds. On one side of those doors is a fantasy. On the other side of each of those doors are the people who do the work that creates the fantasy. Justin Larson is a union baby. He has brown skin, a tiny nose stud, a low beard, and a forearm tattoo that reads "Never Grow Up" with a picture of Peter Pan. He's 26 years old when I wrote it. For 25 of those years, his mother's been a food server at the Las Vegas airport. For most of that time, she's also been a shop steward in the mighty Culinary Union, Local 226 of the International Union. Justin grew up playing at the Union Hall. In his early 20s, he took a job as a barista at Starbucks at the airport, which landed him in the union as well. He spent the past year taking part in the union's leave of absence program, in which they pull workers out of their day jobs, give them training, and teach them how to do union work. From 2021 to 2022, Justin has been working as an organizer representing the union's hundreds of members at the resplendent Bellagio in the heart of the Vegas Strip. Trailing him around there as he does his rounds is like watching Ray Liotta and Goodfellas breezing into the crowded nightclub through the kitchen.
You Ray Liotta, brother.
That raucous scene had been accompanied by many, many more complaints. In the center courtyard of the Bellagio, blissful guests lounge on padded pool chairs around a series of aquamarine pools flanked by bars and cabanas. Little do they know the chaos that surrounds them, separated by a single wall. Everywhere Justin pokes his head, a crisis awaits. Minor outrages abound. Management has removed the employee lockers. A bartender is forced to use a bucket for her tools because they moved her storage area too far away. A manager is out serving drinks, an ominous sign of understaffing. All the vacation fantasies playing out by the pool exist atop an unseen sea of pandemonium. In the kitchen behind one of the pool bars, a harried server with curly blonde hair and whose uniform is a bikini stacks a fantastic number of drinks on a serving tray and tries to check drink tickets while simultaneously narrating to Justin a litany of scheduling problems. It's a shit show, she concludes apologetically before whirling out toward the cabanas. Though Justin is, technically speaking, just a 20-something airport Starbucks employee, he strides through this palace of luxury with the confidence of a CEO, nodding to managers, stopping everywhere to talk to employees in hushed tones, and always making mental notes about the evolving landscape of possible contract violations. His power is the union button he wears. It's as good as any VIP pass that a casino company could bestow. The Culinary Union, you see, runs this fucking town. They earn their influence with close to 90 years of sweat, and they have as much to teach us about how regular people can build power as any union in the United States of America. Thank you, Justin. Sorry for surprising you with that. I hope that was all right.
You're all good.
So now, thank you, Ted, for joining me here. I interviewed you for this chapter, and I wanted to sort of ask you, first of all, one of my favorite parts of interviewing you was that you've been in this union such a long time that you kind of stretch back to a little bit of an earlier era of Las Vegas. And I just want to say, can you talk about how Las Vegas has changed during your time in this union and what that means for the union?
Well, let me make sure folks can hear me. And first of all, I just want to say that passage you read out of the book was spectacular, and I got a chance to read it this morning. Gave me chills a little bit. I know this is not answering your question, but I'm going to get to it. And look, this idea of we walk from the fantasy world into the real world when we walk through the hotels, I think if you worked in the hotels, you do that all the time. And you just take it for granted after a while. But this passage in the book, and you all get a chance to read this, and it was just, I was struck by the imagery and the way you wrote that. So I just want to tell you thank you for what you wrote about us, but really just capturing that process. Look, when I was, first started out working in hotels, I was 15 the first time. I worked as a busboy at the Old Sands Hotel, and that was in 1976. And really didn't know much about anything. I didn't know nothing about nothing. And back then, the head hostesses made the schedules, and if you didn't get the bus tubs out in time and get the dishes cleaned in time, they grabbed you and moved you a little faster, and you learned to move your ass. And that's one thing you learn working in hotels. You got to learn to move and get the work done. You definitely learn a work ethic. So that hasn't changed. If anything, what was the corporate kind of takeover when, we hear all the stories about, when the mob ran Vegas and all those kind of things, and essentially the storyline is that the corporations were meaner and they were tougher and kind of took over. If anything, it's just become more corporate. And what evolved from were a group of kind of owners, that some local owners and some corporations evolved into now these basically private equity and hedge funds that are not here, and they tend to run the show. And they have REITs that, all the big companies now rent. They don't even own the buildings or the land. They rent. They're management companies. And they're even more removed, the ownership is, from the workers. And I just feel like it means that we've had to get more organized, more disciplined, and we've had to just get stronger because the companies are much bigger. And you brought up this whole issue of the disparity of wealth. Mm-hmm. And it's all designed to just make that disparity even bigger and bigger. And so, I'm on one hand really proud of what we've done, and because it's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that went into what we've been able to build and make here in Las Vegas. But the challenges are just much greater, and the pandemic exacerbated it. Mm-hmm.
The private equity firms are worse than the gangsters in a lot of ways. Yeah.
Well, when it comes to dealing with the workers, but when I came up, and I worked when I was younger, then I went off to school and messed around and flunked out of school and ended up back in the hotels. It was corporate, mm-hmm. But it was still a different level of corporate. I mean, I worked graveyard shifts, and around 6 in the morning I was a bartender, and I'd find a corner in my bar to stand, and I'd sleep standing up against the wall, right? And you did that, or I worked downtown at some of the properties, and we would, there would be a place where the graveyard guys would go take their naps, and you'd have a pit boss sleeping on that couch, and you'd be over here. Well, that doesn't happen anymore. That went away. That was 40 years ago. Now, you're terminated for that kind of stuff. So it's just, it's a little different.
When I talk to people out in the rest of the country about kind of what this union has accomplished, I usually say, I think they sort of created the middle class of Las Vegas in many ways. Do you think that's accurate? And have you ever thought about what this city would look like without the Culinary Union in it?
Well, we don't have to think about it really hard. We can just go nearby. We can go to Laughlin. Reno is mostly non-union in the hotels, but we've been able to expand our influence. 226 is the reason we've got unions in Mississippi in gaming, and that riverboats are organized, and that as gaming expanded into Atlantic City, we made sure we were a part of making sure that if it expanded, it got organized. But hospitality jobs are poor people's jobs generally. You know, whether you've got college students trying to get by or whatever, that's one thing. But any other community in this country, if it's not organized with some kind of density, you know, we're right now in Pennsylvania, if you're a tip earner, you get $2.13 an hour, and the minimum wage in the state of Pennsylvania is, I don't know, $7.50, something like that. Our unions are not very big in Pennsylvania, and that's just one example. So yeah, we call it the Las Vegas dream, and that means you have an opportunity to have a good job with decent wages, and you get health care. You're not going to go, you know, bankrupt if you get sick or your kids get sick. You have the possibility to own a home one day, and have some kind of retirement. You know, Social Security is critical, but it's not enough, and you have something. You know, so you have some dignity when you retire, and we call it the Las Vegas dream, but it's the American dream, and it's being eaten away right now. It's being taken away.
You've been in the city so long at this point. Do you ever reach a point when you feel like the industry accepts the union and that you're sort of reached this like labor peace status where they say, all right, the casino industry is a union industry and we're going to carry on like that? Does that ever do you reach that? Have you reached it? Or will you never reach that?
Well, I would say that there are partners that we develop relationships with over a long time, and those relationships have almost always come out of massive fights or strikes. And we have to be ready to fight. We call ourselves a fighting union, but what that just means is that you've got to be willing to take on companies at any time. You mentioned a quote in the book. You know, I just say this a lot. Las Vegas is a company town, like historical, you know, mining towns or steel towns where you had a steel mill or a mine or a factory and they ran the town. Well, Las Vegas is a company state. You know, 50% of the budget for the state budget, 50% comes from gaming taxes, roughly. And so even if you've had it out with a company and you've had a big fight and that company says, okay, we're not union busters anymore, we're going to try to have a peace plan, that management is gone in 2 years and another management team is coming in, or these properties get bought and sold all the time and the new ones come to town and you got to be ready to take them on. So, for example, we've got a big dispute with the new management team over at the Virgin Hotel, where the previous one a few years ago, we had an agreement for card check neutrality. Well, that's gone, and we're probably going to be on strike over there. And so with any of these companies, you're only as good as your last fight, and you got to show strength no matter what. And if you do that, then you can have a respectful relationship, we think.
Ever since I, started reporting on this union and started learning about what the Culinary Union has done in Vegas, I've always been kind of fascinated by the question of like, can you replicate this in other cities? In one sense, Vegas is extremely unique city. The Strip is unique, and the sort of single industry quality of it is unique, and the physical proximity of it is unique. But, I've always looked at what the Culinary Union has done and been like, why isn't this everywhere? And there's actually a chapter in this book about Unite Here and in Miami and New Orleans, and talking about kind of Unite Here trying to build some of the same kind of power that you all have built here in different cities and within different tourist economies and things like that. But I wonder what you think about that. I met a lot of people in Unite Here, especially who came up in Vegas or learned the union trade in Vegas essentially, and went out and spread that to other cities. But do you think this place is unique, or do you think that you have something that can be a model for a lot of other cities?
Well, I don't know. I guess I'm just kind of looking at everybody here, and I'm just thinking about it, and I wonder, you all are I wonder what you think about all that. Are we unique? Or I don't really think we are that much. I think just the normal kind of ethos here is that, you know, our motto is we call it a little people, right? It's our logo of workers that's on our button, and we call it the little people. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I'm constantly astounded that we can get together, the little people, and we can go out on the street against these giant palaces of steel and concrete and glass, and we can take them on, and we can cost them and cause them, we can take billions of dollars out of their pocket just by the little people being together, sticking together and fighting. So in that way, I don't think we're unique. I don't think we're even that special. I think we just are regular people, but there is a very uncommon, I think, commitment to fight. And I'm not saying it's even uncommon. It's just that we've made a decision. I know personally we've had some incredible leaders here that have been giants, I think. And one of them is D. Taylor, that was here for many years, and Giacondo Guerrero Klein, our previous leaders, the local. And look, they weren't any, you know, special in certain ways, but they had an incredible will to push back and be willing to fight. And what I find is that workers, I go all over the country and I see workers, and everywhere I go, workers want to have a better life, and they want to make things better for their kids, and they want to have something, you know, a future to look forward to. So I see workers like that everywhere. But we have made a decision that we are going to create a culture that we're going to be very disciplined, and we're going to fight. And what I see that workers want, they don't want to know that you're always going to win, but they want to know that you're going to fight. Mm-hmm. You've got to be willing to take on a fight. They're also, you know, you got to understand when it's time to, you know, kind of grab your chips and go home, right? You know, you got to get the deal done and move forward to grow. And I guess the other thing I just want to say, look, you talked about it. You talked about following Justin around, which it was tremendous. You'll love reading this, Justin. It's really something, the way he's just documented what we do. But the other thing he talked about was the grind that we do. We believe in the grind. You know, the number one thing I believe that guarantees that we come out on top of these companies is our daily check-ins. Mm-hmm. You know, and you document that. You know, everybody doesn't believe in this. Every union doesn't believe in this. Every organization doesn't believe in this. Mm-hmm. We check in every single day in every department, and we want to know what is our goals for today, and we want to know, did we hit our goals yesterday? Period. You know, and now we're going to analyze what's going on, but we all hold ourselves accountable. And I have to tell you, it's the old saying from Dr. King, you know, that the movement is 90% inspiration or perspiration and 10% inspiration. It's about the perspiration and the grind. And one of the messages that we sent to these companies is that we're never going to go away. Mm-hmm. You know, if we're in the fight, we're in the fight. We might be down, we might lose a battle, but we're going to stand and win the war. We're 15 years in with stations. So are we unique? I don't believe we are, but I think there's some uncommon will to fight and to commit and sacrifice to do what it takes to win here. That is, you know, I admire that in our members and our staff and our workers.
Absolutely, and I think, I think that's something that I've seen, you know, through many trips here to report on this union at all levels of the union. You know, it's from the bottom, from the shop floor to the organizers to the staff to everybody, you know, is that sort of constant work and constant internal organizing, you know, to keep the union strong. And I've done these events for this since this book came out all over the country, and a lot of union people come to these events, and you know, a lot of union people have come to these events and said to me, you know, I like all this stuff that you're writing about, but my union doesn't do any of this. My union kind of sucks. You know, my union is lazy. Like, I don't, like, you're writing about all this great stuff the unions do, and meanwhile my union is just checks in at contract time and that's it. And I'm like, well, you know, look at the chapter on the Culinary Union and try to follow that model. Do you attribute that to anything? Like, it really, especially like the internal organizing that this union does, you know, to keep people engaged in the union and mobilized and turning out to stuff and turning out to a book event, you know, like where did that arise from, you know?
Well, I'm going to say this. You guys can tell me what's the number one thing gripe you when you walk inside the hotel from just the average Joe Blow member that really isn't involved in going to the picket lines. What do they say, guys? The union doesn't do anything. My union doesn't do anything. And we have a saying for that. We was like, great. Because, you know, that's what you know, our goal is, we're on a mission here. We're missionaries, right? Our goal is to convert people into action. And we have a situation where if somebody's already got a union contract, in other words, they kind of got what they got, and it's a little different than the folks that don't have it, you know, that are fighting for it. And so we always have to be able to go back to those folks and remind them over and over and over again about what they have and what it took to get it. So there's a couple things we do, you know, to the typical person that says my union doesn't do anything. We always say, that's great. Justin, you say your union doesn't do anything. What's the first word out of your mouth when you show up at the doctor? And Culinary Union, right? Right. But your union doesn't do anything, right? And what happens when you got a problem? Where do you go? The Culinary Union. But your union doesn't do anything. And what about those raises you got? Who negotiated those raises? The Culinary Union, right? So, look, part of what has to happen is that, and we believe in this, and is that you got to go back to folks and be constantly open, constantly organizing them. But it doesn't matter if you don't push people to action. So an organizer has to have the skill set to be able to explain to folks, but we're not social workers. There's no social workers that belong in the union. We are, and that's you know, I admire social workers, and we need social workers. This world can't turn without social workers, and we need that. But that's something different. An organizer's job is to identify, recruit, and train leaders. And that means to move them. So if you are not getting people to move, a group of people to assemble and move, you're not doing your job as an organizer. That's what we believe in. And we have to hold ourselves accountable. So, look, it's very common for folks that have their contract that maybe aren't the ones negotiating it to say my union doesn't do this or that. Look, the truth of the matter is, and you know, you were pretty tough about this, the union labor movement's not doing what they should. They need to, the movement as a whole needs to organize more. We're at the smallest percentage, especially private sector, which is hovering around 6%. It's not good enough. So all the power that we have is not enough. We've got to do more. But for us, you got to hold yourself accountable. You know, so if we think the rest of the labor movement needs to organize more, well, we need to lead the way, and we've got to make sure we grow. But I'm going to quote Gioconda, our leader, that before me, she always said, you know, our internal organizing is the heart of the union, and if you don't take care of your internal organizing and get people mobilizing your heart, then you die. Without your heart, you die. But also, the external and non-union organizing is the future of the union, and if you don't have a future, you die. So you have to do both, and we are constantly fighting with our members and organizing our members about why both of those things are true. And then let me just add one last thing, because I'm on this rant right now. So is that when you are an organizing union, you're going to have blowback from some members who think you should be taking that money that you're spending on workers that don't have the union, that don't pay dues, and you should be spending that on grievances and their problems, and that's all you should do. If the labor movement really becomes an organizing movement, you know, with just the numbers you put in your book, right, then you have to take that on. That means that every election as an elected leader, you're going to have opposition who thinks we shouldn't be organizing the workers at Stations Casinos. We shouldn't have organized the workers at the Venetian. We shouldn't have organized the workers at the Fontainebleau. We shouldn't have organized, you know, the 33,000 workers that we did with card checks that we've organized in Las Vegas since, you know, 1989. They like the results, but the truth is you got to put your money where your mouth is, and you have to have an organization that organizes the membership and wins your internal elections every 3 years, and to allow you to move forward. That's a responsibility we all have, and we really believe in that. So that's kind of where we think the movement has to go. But you got to put your money where your mouth is, and we're trying to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, America, as you said, 6% of the private sector workers in America are union, you know, and Las Vegas, very different situation from that. So you all are unique in that sense. Another thing that I try to write a little bit about that this union does, and that I kind of admire about the Culinary Union, is sort of the way that you do politics, or the way that you relate to politics and electoral politics. And I've seen, as a labor reporter over the years, there's a lot of unions that their relationship to politics is like they write a check to, you know, a candidate, and that is their vision of how they build power for the union within politics. You know, I already met one of your members here who's on the ballot in November. I'm not sure where she's. There she is.
Is Linda here?
Right.
Woo, woo, woo! Got to vote for Linda Hunt?
But I always felt like this union sort of rooted your political power in organizing, and in labor power first and then political power. So can you just kind of talk a little bit about how you think about politics and how it relates to all the other stuff the union does?
Well, look, there's a couple ways we look at it. One is that we're not a political organization. We're a union, and that's our responsibility. And a union has to be able to take on the biggest corporations, because that's what it is now. You know, we're not dealing with small companies and local companies and mom and pops. They're worldwide massive corporations, and you really have to be united and you have to be disciplined to take them on. You've got to have the resources to do it. They're overwhelming, these companies out there. And if you rest for a moment, they're going to run you over. Mm-hmm. If you rest for a moment, they're going to run you over. So politics naturally divides people. You know, an election, regardless of what kind of election, there's a, you know, when there's a labor election, there's a point where you polarize the group when you know you've got the majority. But you only do that when you have a majority. And, you know, and that's a whole other conversation about labor elections. But political elections, naturally, this group that we work so hard to unite gets split up naturally during the election, especially the way our country is right now. Mm-hmm. So if we are going to take on these powers and try to do some good politically, you are going to run the risk of polarizing your own workforce. And so when you try to go take on issues in your restaurant and folks are disagreeing with each other, then you can't take on the manager and you can't take on the company. So we have to figure out a way to do that, and we have to stick to issues that really unite people and move people in a big way. At the same time, we say all the time that we can negotiate the best contract, we can go on strike, we can do whatever we want, like this great contract we got, and then politicians can take it away. They can pass legislation that took it away. And, you know, that's example is this big fight we had over daily room cleaning within the legislature, where Democrats were the deciding votes to dismantle this daily room cleaning that we had worked hard to get in our state regs. And we had a big fight with the Democrats that we supported on that issue. So we have to do it in a way that's going to make sure that people are going to be feeling like you're in the movement, but we got to also listen to our members, you know, and working class voters and working class members, they're not all buried up their eyeballs in politics. They actually don't care that much about it. They got to get their kids off to school. They got to get to work. They got to then get their kids picked up. They got to get dinner on the table. And, you know, when it comes time, maybe they're going to want to be able to pay attention. So what we've done is change that. And the way we do that is by our leave of absence program. And this is just a basic bedrock thing that we do. We ask our members to come out on leave of absence, and they take a leave of absence. Their job is safe and secure, but they come and work in our Canvas program, and we spend all of our money that we raise, because we can't put this type of program out ourselves, and we try to fund some of it, but we raise money for most of it. And those workers talk worker to those working class voters, those folks that are rushing in the door with their kids trying to get dinner, and we're there at the door, right, guys? We stop them at the door, say, hold on a minute. You know, what do you think about the high price of groceries? Oh, that sucks. What do you want to do about it? You know, we can't do anything about it. Yes, you can. We're here because we're going to do something about the high price of groceries and the high price of gas and the cost of housing and your rent that went up 40% in the last 5 years and all these kind of things. You're going to register to vote, and then you got to come and vote. And what happens is, if we take 400 of our members out on a leave of absence, and they walk 3 months in the heat, knocking on doors, and they go back to the hotel, they're junior organizers now. You know, they've got skills and toughness, and they take it right back into the hotel. And I know we got a lot of culinary folks here. How many of you have done a political leave of absence? Raise your hand. Yeah.
A lot.
So, yeah. Yeah. And how many of you got chased by dogs and yelled at and door slammed in your face? Yeah. Because we're not just dropping off door hangers. You know, it's about having conversations. So, look, this idea of we don't hand checks to politicians, and some politicians don't like that about us. But what we do is we spend way more money than that about of really getting the vote out and producing the vote. And that's, I believe, how we've gotten respect from the general political world out there.
Yeah. I'll ask you one more question, and then I'll open this up if any of you all have questions for either of us. But I want to preface this question by saying, you know, also some of you might have answers to some of these questions that I've asked Ted too, because all of you in this room have, I think, probably interesting things to say on these topics. So I preface this question by saying, you know, I did a very white guy move, which is I've set up a event about the Culinary Union with 2 white guys on stage. Sorry. But I think that this, you know, so again, like, I'd like to hear from many of you on this question also after this, but I want to ask you too, you know, I cover politics also in addition to labor, and, you know, I cover the presidential campaign, and it seems to me that right now in America, the 2 groups that are sort of the most threatened or under attack politically are women and immigrants, right? And that's, you know, a core of this union. And so what does that mean to the union in this time, and sort of what is the union's role on issues like that aren't, you know, direct workplace issues?
Well, let me just say this. I'm going to call somebody out here, our president, Deanna Valles, who can answer that. It's very tough. Deanna, come on up here. Just this question about really this idea of women and immigrants being under attack, and kind of what do we think we can do about that? Yeah.
You don't have to stand up. You're fine there. Yeah.
All right.
Well, our union, it is majority of Latinos and women. A lot of those women work in the hotels. They're cleaning rooms every day. And I can proudly say that I was one of them. I was a guest room attendant many years ago. And you can see our members here. Some of them, they came from working in the hotels, and they're here. because everything they know, and these people that understand what it is to be part of a union and how the union transformed their lives. And they could be working as hard as they work right now in any other place in this country. But it just because they're in Las Vegas, their lives is totally different. So yes, right now it is a attack on women and immigrants, but we, the immigrants, the women, we are a really powerful people that we're just gonna fight.
Yeah.
It's not the first time that we have attacks on us, and that never stopped us. To the opposite, we grow stronger. This is not going to be the last time, I know too, but I know that every time that this is happening, more people stand up, more people say, I want to do something, and our union is always going to be there to fight all these things that is going around the country, because our union is a reflect of what it is when people get together and fight. And our union is an example of how, no matter the color of your skin, the language, where you're coming from, when you get together, when you fight together, no matter how big is the obstacle, we're going to win.
Deanna, I'm going to ask her one more thing here, because, look, Deanna has a very unique history, but it's not so unique. But yeah, you were a guest room attendant, but that's not where you ended up. And you ended up in the middle of all the men in the kitchen. I want you to just kind of tell that story a little bit.
Okay, yeah. So when I first came here to the United States from Mexico, I was 18 years old. And the first job that I found, it was this guest room attendant work. And it's hard. If it is hard now, back then it was harder. It was not language for the housekeepers. We have to clean 17 rooms, 18 rooms. That's what you have to do. No language of checkouts or anything. That's you gotta be running and doing all that. So I did that work for 7 years. Then after that, I moved to be a casino porter, graveyard, right? Because there's not too many opportunity for guest room attendants to move to another classification. So I moved and I went to be a casino porter. But it was graveyard, and I was raising my kids, single mom, so I had to be with my kids. So I ended up taking this position as a cook at the Flamingo. And I was the only woman working on those kitchens as a cook. And I only was able to get that position because nobody wants to sign that position because it was really hard. So when I first get there, it was like the machismo, the macho thing that, what is this woman doing in here with all these cooks? And nobody has nothing to do with me, but there were a lot of injustices in that kitchen. So I started organizing my co-workers, all these men that they're so macho that they don't want to do nothing with me, but they want to fight the chef. Right? They were so afraid of the chef. So I started organizing them, building the relationship with them. And it was, cook is a really hard work too. And they ended up, once I organized all these cooks, all these macho men, once we organized them, we ended up firing that chef that was so unfair. They're always another one who came, right? But then after that, everybody was like helping me, like, no, don't keep that. No, I help you there. That's what that, and then after that, the union invited me to come in LA again. And since then, I've been there for 20 years. Yes.
Yeah. All right.
Perfect answer to that question. All right, well, let's open it up. If anybody has a question, please raise your hand. Don't be shy. Or if you want to stand up and share a heartfelt story about the Culinary Union, also stand up. I have more questions. I can keep talking, but
Well, let me say this. We got a few minutes left. I know we got a lot of our folks here, and there's some other folks here too, so there might be some questions. But there also, look, if y'all have some thoughts about kind of how our union, how do we win, we'd love to hear that. What are your thoughts about, like, what do you think is the most important thing that our union does to make sure that we win? I'd love to hear that from folks.
I'd love to hear that.
Don't be shy. None of you guys are shy.
Oh, yes, I see a hand. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Acela Martinez. I'm the union organizer for Flamingo, and I'm a member for 35 years. And I was working in Flamingo. And the biggest thing for my union, my culinary union, because I feel very proud of, so is organization. I never forget the time when we started to stand out to fighting for the guest room attendance. I was a guest room attendant for 14 years. In 2001, we started to build a committee. I was in LOA, and my director is Ted Pappageorge. I remember the group in LOA, brand new. We never know about the mobilization, and they sent it to us to build a committee because in 2002 we need to win the language for the housekeeping. It's amazing history. You know, I never forget this history. We put it out more than 25,000 workers voting for the strike for support the guest room attendance. That's my amazing, powerful, organization in my culinary union. I never forget that, and I want to share it with everybody because it's a history. And every single time we are organizing, we never stop organizing. It's like we organize until we win. So that's the thing I have in my memory. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.